Your boys, Norman, London, Ontario, Mike in Cheektowaga, New York. This is the Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario. OakRidgeFord.com. I've got three of the best lease specials on the planet right now on an F-150, a Bronco Sport, and the all-new Escape Active. Get at me at Norman Oak Ridge Ford on Instagram. Well, the season is done. Oh, happy Mother's Day, by the way. Please extend how I feel to your wonderful mother. Mike Augello, and of course, Melissa, happy Mother's Day to you and all the mothers out there who are listening, and all of you OGs and converts who have mothers. Tell them we told them happy Mother's Day. Not necessarily a happy day for Leafs fans, still reeling from the 5-game loss to the Panthers in round 2 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Another season is over. Mr. Augello, Johnny in the chat wants us to go scorched earth. So we're not going to go excessively long today. There's really no reason to do so. Maybe about 20, 25 minutes. OG's Conference, we're going to do a show a week. So we're not going away for any extended period of time. And we'll be able to kind of break this down, unpack it, and then rebuild it over the next several weeks and months ahead. But as of right now, Mike, what's in your brain? How are you feeling about what just happened and where we're going?
Well, I mean, when they were down 3-0, I think everybody knew that the season was over with. It was just a question of when. I mean, there was the optimism and hope. And obviously the game 5, the goal that was a no goal that should have been a goal. I mean, you can chew on that and get mad about that, but as Sheldon Keefe said, the series was lost in the first 3 games. It was lost when they didn't take advantage of a Florida team that even Matthew Tkachuk admitted that Toronto was the more skilled team. But we know, and we've said this on this show and on a lot of shows, that it's not all about skill in the playoffs. It's about will. It's about physicality and the intangibles. And the Leafs did not win that battle, even in the series against Tampa. They won that series. They beat them, but they had to come from behind. They had to, get great goaltending in certain instances from Ilya Samsonov. In the 11 playoff games, and I'll keep harping on this because it's true, and I don't care what people on Twitter and whatever say. Oh, they only lost by. They were the worst of the 2 teams in 8 of the 11 games that they played in the playoffs. In terms of, maybe they had chances. They didn't convert on them. They didn't get the good goaltending, or they didn't get the defense, or they couldn't kill penalties, or whatever. They were not the better team in 8 of those 11 games, and they won 5 of the 11. So they won games that they probably shouldn't have won in most circumstances. And in the end, when you look at this team, that this season is their legacy.
Wow. This is the Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, OakRidgeFord.com, OG's Converts. Thanks so much for being here. I know it's been a rough couple of days, but onward we go. And it's not like we haven't been in this position before. Here's an interesting comment from Justin Verge. Sorry, fellas, but the fact Keefe said the series was over when we went 3-0 is absolutely ridiculous of a head coach. Believe it till the end, getting paid millions to say these kinds of things. Sheldon Keefe is going to come on under quite the microscope, as if he isn't already under one, over the next several days and weeks. Whether he keeps his job or not will be up for debate. Mm-hmm. There aren't too many out there right now who are examining what happened and planning for the future, who believe that Sheldon Keefe should be on the bench come training camp in preseason. What do you think, Mike?
Well, I mean, before Sheldon, the decision has to be made on the general manager, because the general manager will make the decision on the coach. And as you know, and I've discussed this point for a while now, and I think Kyle Dubas should be brought back. I know there are people out there that want him fired, or
tell us. I have my reasons why I think he should come back. Can you tell us yours?
Well, I think that if you look at this organization in his tenure since taking over in 2018, his accumulation of talent, whether it be organizationally drafting or trading or developing, has been one of the better records in the league. Now, okay, they drafted. I always make the argument.
So can't he just be head of scouting or player development?
Well, no, because that's a demotion. So it's either he's general manager or he's not going to be back. And what I'm saying is, I think he's been effective. He's made mistakes, no doubt. I think he was slow in recognizing that certain types of players were needed to make this team more of a playoff ready team than they were. And
how do you think that is, Mike?
What's that? I'm sorry.
Why do you think it took him as long as it did for him to come out of this idealistic concept of how to win a championship?
I think he had a certain belief system that that skilled players and players that operate at high pace would be successful in this league. And to a point, he's right. But we know that when it comes to hockey and the NHL, it's 2 seasons. It's a regular season and it's a playoffs. And the type of team that succeeds in the regular season and the type of team that succeeds in the playoffs are 2 completely different things. You see a team like Florida that barely snuck into the playoffs, but they're a bunch of red asses. They play physical, they play high energy. They're a little dirty sometimes, but it works. That's what you need. And the problem with Toronto, and I think Dubas now has recognized this, is that you need sort of a multiple approach in terms of having skill and in terms of having a dabble of this and a dabble of that. You can't have all skill. You can't have all physicality. You have to be able to adjust to different scenarios. And I think he did that. The acquisition of O'Reilly, the acquisition of Achari, bringing in Luke Shen, all to supplement the core group. And the thing is, those players played great.
Right.
It's just the core group that didn't. And that is the message that I've been saying for 4 years. And I think finally, everybody is saying, even the players in the post game, Norm, there was a resignation in the voices. Yes, we love this group. Yes, we want to keep it together. But the tone was, we know that we're probably not going to be together. So step 1 is what to do about Dubas.
Right.
I've been of the belief, and there have been whispers and going back a couple months, that Dubas was going to be brought back. Maybe it would depend on him winning a round. We just had Rachel Dory, who is a former person in management with the Vancouver Canucks, really connected, and she said on the show that there have been rumors out there that a deal is already done, that it hasn't been announced, but a deal is already done. Now, we've heard that. I don't know. I'm going to wait until we're locker clean out is tomorrow, probably tomorrow, maybe Tuesday in Toronto. I will be there and I'll ask the question, and like everybody else will ask the question, but do I think he should be brought back? Yes. Elliot Friedman said last night he believes that Dubas will be brought back. So when Elliot believes something, it's based on things that he's hearing. So I believe Kyle Dubas will be back.
Yeah. Let me just go through a few things here. Spike 11, bringing back Dubas is asinine. We also had another comment here. My buddy Hazik Siddiqui, contract. He mentioned that he heard that they were talking contract for Dubas. Handshake line, respect, fire Keefe, don't re-sign Dubas. And this is going to be a polarizing topic, Mike, and you know that. There's another comment here. Zed Fowler, Leafs should have got tougher players and not pretty players. Look at the thing about it, Mike, is that generally the idea of toughness is a dude who comes out and fights and hits and is just running around like a nutcase and is good in and in fits and starts and in certain circumstances, and then he's either in the penalty box or he's suspended or he's injured. Again, we can frame a tough player. We can frame it like that and use it to make a case against toughness. Like, why would you want to have guys who are fighting and in the penalty box all the time and not have speed and skill? Well, guess what? You can have speed, skill, and toughness. And as I've said always, and I don't know anything, if I'm as skilled as you, if I'm as fast as you, but if I'm tougher than you, I'm going to beat you.
Yeah. Alexander Barkov is not exactly a tough player. I mean, you don't need toughness 1 through 12 on your forward lines if you're a team. But they have Sam Bennett, and Sam Bennett was a difference maker in this series. Carter Verhaeghe is not a physical player. He's a skilled winger, but they have Matthew Tkachuk. There's a balance. Right. And the Leafs did have a better balance with this particular squad than they had in the past. But the problem is that the guys like Matthew Tkachuk is out there 20 minutes a night, and Matthew Tkachuk is going to hit everything that moves.
And he loved it. Mike, the thing about Florida is they embraced every bloody moment of that series, and they skated into Toronto 10 feet tall after taking down the Bruins in overtime.
Sure.
They embraced every moment of it. I never got the sense that the Leafs were having a lot of fun and owning it. I mean, again, there's so much pressure on them based on their lack of success, and then just getting past Tampa. You got to think that they knew that they really hadn't played their best hockey and weren't sure what the hell they were going to produce against the Panthers, even though they wanted the Panthers and many fans wanted the Panthers.
And believe me, they mentioned that more than a few times. But I will defend the Leaf fans who were cheering in Maple Leaf Square saying we want Florida. In anybody's right mind, would you rather have Boston? No. So right. Of course you want Florida. But, they use that as bulletin board material like they needed it.
I know.
And so, Nick Cousins was laughing and Matthew Tkachuk was laughing. And that's to the victor go the spoils. Right.
I'm just sorry. I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no,
I really appreciate having you here. I haven't seen you in a little while. But again, though, I felt like having a series with Boston and the history of losing to Boston on multiple occasions would have kept the Leafs a little more humble and a little more hungry in such a pivotal moment in this the franchise's run. It would have kept, to me, as the underdog, would have given them even more fuel to finally make this thing happen against a team that's been a thorn in their side. This idea that
to slay the dragon,
that a team that is inferior to you is going to come in and you're just going to be able to pull it off. Look, this happens in Little League baseball. It happens in junior hockey. It happens in high school fencing. And it happened in this series too. I'm not saying the Leafs just came out and thought they were going to win. I never saw any kind of assertiveness. We just go out and have a blast, whereas Florida running in to Toronto on a high, having beat Boston 3 straight to win that series, man. If that were the Maple Leafs coming from behind to win a series like that, going on the road to start another series, after kind of building that aggression, building that momentum, building that positivity and that spirit, they would have been in that same position too. Luckily for Florida, they're just on a run right now, and it's going to be interesting to see how they take on Carolina. And I'm going to be rooting for the Panthers because I want another ex-Leaf who was basically kicked out of town to go on and win a Stanley Cup. I mean, it happened with Freddie Anderson.
Well, Freddie tried his best, but the teams in front of him were flawed.
Right.
The thing is, the narrative on the series against Florida is that in the games that the Leafs did play well, they didn't play well long enough. They were up 2-0 in game 2 and then couldn't maintain it and then gave it back with that 47-second span and then could never beat Bobrovsky. I mean, nobody can blame Joseph Wall for the loss in Game 5. I thought he played really well, and I think next year you're probably going to see a Samsonov-Wall tandem unless they go out and trade for a number one goaltender. Remember, Samsonov's a restricted free agent. I think they're going to end up buying out Matt Murray of the last year of his contract. But again, so going back, so I believe Dubas will be back. There are indications that Dubas will be back. Whether he has more power now or less power, who knows? But I do believe and there really are no great opportunities out there. They keep mentioning the Pittsburgh Penguins. I don't think that's going to happen, or Calgary. No. And, I mean, people can say Dubas hasn't done the job. And I think Dubas, if you interviewed him and he's like, okay, I'm doing the best that I can. And, yes, the results aren't there. The results are based on the coaching and the players.
Yeah.
Now they're okay. There definitely are going to be changes in some aspects with the coaching. Spencer Carberry, who's one of the assistants, is a leading candidate for the Washington Capitals job. He might be in the mix for the Rangers job. He's he was almost the Boston Bruins coach, but they decided to go with Jim Montgomery. You can't argue with that. So they're going to probably lose an assistant. Okay, Sheldon has 1 year left in his contract. I would be led to believe, or I would believe that with their long history, that Keefe would be allowed to finish off the last year of that contract. But who knows? Part of the deal with Dubas getting an extension might be you've got to find yourself a coach.
He can't be tied to his guys. If you're running this organization and you were the constructor of the dream, you're the purveyor of your ideology and how you intend to achieve this dream. Mm-hmm. You can't be tied to anybody,
right?
And that's the thing. If William Nylander's the easiest guy to trade, and you're going to make this team better, out he goes. I'm saying, Mike, you can't be tied to guy. This isn't Kyle Dubas isn't here just to be surrounded by his buddies. And I think there was a bit of an impression about that. And I'm not sure it was true, but just the way he was building the team with the guys he figured would help its team elevate its overall stature. And now we're into a completely different set of circumstances. We've been down this road where it's been mild and moderate success, but certainly not enough. He's got to do, if he's back, he's got to do what's right for, one, the organization, and two, for himself, so that he can have longevity and find this ultimate success, right. Mike. And that's the thing.
Well, I don't think he stayed with Sheldon Keefe out of pure loyalty. I think he stayed with Sheldon Keefe because he believes he's a good coach. And, the problem is, and I will keep coming back to this because it's what I believe and what I think is the main issue. Over the last 5 seasons, for 4 players, they spent a total of $200 million, and they've got one winning round to show for it.
And who spent that with me?
Now that, to my mind, that's an indictment, not on the general manager who paid them, not on the coach that coached them, on the players who are on the ice. So now I think, and believe me, it's as old as the crucifixion. A coach will suffer the slings and arrows for the players that he coaches.
Right.
And I think it's a 50-50 proposition that Sheldon is either kept or fired. I think it's up in the air. I think Dubas would like to bring him back, but again, if he's extended, it might be you have to make some changes, and one of the changes is the coach.
Okay. So I'm just Michael Joy, 88, was the best player for Toronto in the playoffs. Not true on any level. Like, again,
he was the best of the core group.
Right.
Of the core 4, he was the best of them. But that's not saying
trading Nylander helped the Leafs score more than 2 goals a game. The problem is, Steven, the guy's up for a major contract. You're really going to re-sign that guy to massive money? What's Nylander going to be asking for?
Well, okay, and this is okay. So let's.
I'm not shitting on. I'm just, again, we got to pull ourselves away from these dudes we love so much. If it's Matthews, it's Matthews. If it's I like Marner, But if he's got to be traded to bring something back to help change the complexion of this group and make it tougher, make it more aggressive, try something different, I'm all for it. I don't care about these guys personally. I care about this damn team. So I'm not upset with Nylander at all. Thank you, William Nylander. But you know as well, Mike, you said it. He scored 2 goals. He's good offensively, but he has lots of offensive deficiencies. He's not a physical player. He never will be. You cannot tell me that guy is the main element to a championship team. He's had his opportunities. He's not. And Matthews, potentially not either. Marner, he's a guy certainly that we should reassess in terms of what he can bring in the big moments. And John Tavares, as far as I'm concerned, I think he's rounded the curve, man. He's on the back half of a career now, and we have the right to make these assessments on these guys based on the fact that they were nowhere to be found in the series, and this is just this run of futility and this lack of success when it counts the most is getting old.
I'll go back to the coaching thing in a minute because we're now talking about the core group. I think the odds that all 4 of the core players are back next September when training camp opens are virtually nil.
Good.
I think one of them at least, but I think more than likely one of them will not be back. Right. As to which one, that's the question. Now, okay, here's the situation. The one that's definitely not going anywhere, in spite of all the, I hear talk from friends, from family members. They've got to play hardball with John Tavares and make him waive his no move clause. Okay, he's not waiving his no move clause. He signed with Toronto because he wanted to be in Toronto. He wants, he didn't have a great playoff. He didn't score any goals in 5 games against Florida. He did score a hat trick against Tampa Bay. He's still a really good player. He's not the fastest player in the world, but he's got a no move clause and he's not going anywhere. And if they force him, you're just going to not play. Okay. You'll never get another free agent to sign in Toronto ever again. So that's just not realistic. Okay. So click off that one. Austin Matthews, the scary thing right now is everything is in his control. He's got a no move clause that kicks in on July 1st.
Right.
So, and he's got 1 year left in his contract. They need to know whether he wants to stay in Toronto. And based on his comments after the game, he wants to be in Toronto. He wants to win in Toronto. Right. He also wants to be the highest paid player in the NHL, which he will be. He may not get an 8-year contract. He's 26 right now. He may sign another 5-year deal. He may want to get 1 more payday. There have been players before, but that's fine. If it depends on how much they pay. I believe that he's going to there's what is there and there's what I believe. What is there is if he doesn't want to stay in Toronto, then he could get traded before July 1st because they cannot risk the no move clause kicking in and then him saying, oh, I'm just going to stay here and then I'm going to walk away. That's John Tavares in reverse.
And Mike, if that were to be the circumstance, which is extremely, that's an extreme circumstance, pretty limited. That changes that's got to change how they might view William Nylander in a long-term relationship.
Sure. Yeah, it'll change everything. But the whole thing is that and that's another point in favor of Dubas because Dubas knows the landscape. Dubas has a relationship with Matthews, with Judd Moldaver, his agent. You bring in a new general manager, then it's a sort of get to know you type of situation, and then everything is up in the air. So, do I know for certain Austin Matthews is going to re-sign in Toronto? No, I'm not best buddies with Austin Matthews. Based on the feel, based on the player, and right. I think he likes to play in Toronto. I think he likes the bright lights. He doesn't like to be criticized, but he didn't score a goal in 5 games against Florida. So that's really up to him to make that determination. But I do think Austin Matthews will sign a long-term extension. I think he'll make more money than McKinnon. So I think,
right. So he's had ample opportunity to become a playoff legend. He's had an ample opportunity and he's had lots of support around him.
Right.
And that has to be considered, Mike and Steve.
It does. It has to be considered. And he did everything except the thing that he's supposed to do. He did everything but score. And that's, again, this team's problem in the playoffs, this powerhouse offense, when it comes to the playoffs, it dries up like it's the Mojave Desert. They scored 2 goals a game in what? 7 straight games? You can't win that way. Not even the Boston Bruins, not even the New Jersey Devils of the 90s could win with 2 goals per game. So you need to score more.
Right.
So that's Matthews, that's Tavares.
Right.
I believe it's either going to be Nylander or Marner. And Rachel, who was on our show, and I would recommend people listening after they watch the combo, they listen to Off the Post. She said, the thing about Nylander is that Toronto, in the sense of the hype and the hubbub of the big smoke, doesn't affect him. He's like, he's Nylander. He's in his own world. He doesn't hear the noise. He scored 40 goals this year.
Marner, though, and that's where you're going with this.
Yes, it does. And the thing is that Nylander will be cheaper to sign on a new deal than Marner will. And Marner, like I told you before when we were talking about the Lightning series, he walks into the scrum after game 5, and the first words out of his mouth were Jesus Christ, meaning that he saw all the lights and saw I don't want to face this again because we lost, and it was supposed to be a celebration, and they lost a game that they were up 3-1 in the series. That has to be a factor. The fact that in this series against Florida, I'm not gonna say choked, but he clearly did not adjust to the he adjusts to the way the series is played. And
he had the most points in the playoffs for the Maple Leafs. And again, so that's the
thing. He had 11 in the Tampa Bay series, and he had 3 against Florida.
Right. The core four collectively were a failure in the second round. And this is what's really puzzling is why do these guys why are they not making the most of these opportunities? We're in the second round against a team that we know we're better than. Let's go.
Lesser so than Tavares or Matthews, Nylander and Marner are peripheral players. Marner
does, but Mike, if you so this is the thing with Marner, he does so much.
I know.
He play on the periphery. Again, this is a guy who had 99 points. He's pretty much 100-point seasons the last 2 years, but he plays the penalty kill. He's out there late. He does so much. To lose him, who replaces him? Who replaces what he does? And that's the thing with William Nylander. If you don't have him, you can replace him because he is a kind of a one-trick pony, and he does that trick really, really well. But Marner has a more diversity to his game, even if he has the same structural. He does the way he plays offensively is similar to Nylander. It's just he does so much more. That's the thing, Mike, and that has to be taken into account here. If you move him out, who do you bring back as kind of the centerpiece of or the driver of the offense?
This is the thing, because we all look at trading Nylander and trading Marner, and the return is the unknown. And the thing is, it's like almost everybody basically says, well, you can't trade them. You're getting something back, and that's up to Kyle Dubas or whoever the general manager would be to get the best return. Marner's got 2 years left in his contract. He's nominated for the Selke. He's one of the best as a former first-time All-Star. He's 26 years old. He's in the prime of his career. Nylander, same things. He scored 40 goals this year. I mean, let me just read this. Let me just read what Tkachuk said, and I said it was perfectly accurate.
And Matt Tkachuk knew where he was. He knew the circumstance, the fact that he's moving on to the conference finals.
He knew where
and empowered.
He knew where he was in terms of he had the center stage, and he knows Marner. He played on his line with the Knights. He knows Matthews from the U.S. program, so he knows the players in this situation. He says there's a lot of individual skill over there, some unbelievable talent. I just think that the way were able to play as a team, meaning the Panthers, with physicality was the difference. You could see there's a little bit of them wearing down at the end, and I just think our team is built for this moment against them. We definitely don't have as much skill as them. I don't think there's many teams that do, but come playoff time, it's not about that. It's about sticking together. It's about coming through in those moments. It's about timely stuff, and that is an indictment of the Maple Leafs core group, if there ever was one.
Mike, you could have said that pre-playoff.
I've said that for 4 friggin' years.
We all have, right? And OG's Converse, we see there's just a really nice, lively back and forth in the chat, and it's going to continue on through this coming week, the week after that into June, and then as we get closer to July, what's going to happen with Matthews? These are interesting times, certainly, and we appreciate you sharing in these interesting times with us. There's one comment is Marner should be gone. The next one is Nylander should be gone. Why is Matthews? Why should he make all that damn money? Like again, with all this playoff failure. So Tavares, he's not going anywhere, according to you. They've got to figure out what Matthews wants to do, and they don't have much time to determine what's going to be going on with him. It's a big move. Could be Marner. It could be Nylander. So as of right now, May 14th, 2023, Mother's Day, we really don't know what the hell's going to happen, Mike.
No, and we're probably not going to. The draft is June 27th in Nashville. July 1st is the beginning of free agency. I think we're probably, if they make this, first of all, you'll probably find out in the next 4 or 5 days about Dubas. I would think that they're going to announce what they're going to do pretty quickly, because they need to put that in order. And then they probably would announce the coaching situation after that. If it's Keefe being fired, the name that's popped up, and Rachel mentioned it, I'm sure it's been out there, is Joel Quenneville. Now, Joel Quenneville also has, he still has to get cleared by the NHL for the situation with the Chicago Blackhawks, but obviously three Stanley Cups, former Leaf, that's not really important, but I think he former coach of the Florida Panthers. So I think that's a possibility. I still would, if I had to bet $10 on it, I would say Keefe is back. But if there is a need, if there is a, basically I got to provide a couple scalps. Then question. Keefe is one of the scalps.
How do you think? I mean, obviously Joel Quenneville's got a bit of a stigma around him because of everything that took place. And the other thing is, how does that work? Kyle Dubas being where he is in terms of his age and his generation, his demographic, versus a crusty old bugger who's got plenty of success, but sure will adhere to what the general manager has to say or do because he's going to be hired by him. Mm-hmm. But how do you the dynamic? Is this kind of not, if Kyle Dubas can't handle somebody who's much older than him and comes from a different generation, does that mean that as long as Kyle Dubas is the general manager of this team, he has to hire somebody who's closer to him in age? I'm not saying that's the case, and he can't handle it, because again, they're all professionals. But the Babcock-Dubas dynamic just wasn't going to work.
No, but it wasn't
from that Babcock realm. You know what I'm saying?
But it wasn't going to work because Mike Babcock was a power-hungry asshole. That's why. I'm using that language.
The guy they fucking gave up everything to get.
Right. Well, but at the time they needed that. But the thing is that, and you remember, they hire Babcock. They made, Babcock came in and says there's going to be pain. They were going to tank that year. They did it effectively. They got Matthews. They had to bring in Lou Lamoriello as a buffer, because Mike Babcock was going to run roughshod over Mark Hunter or Kyle Dubas, especially Dubas at that point when he was a young assistant GM. He wasn't ready to take on that 800-pound gorilla. So they brought in Lamoriello, and they battled for a few years. Remember Frankie Corrado, or trade for Brian Boyle, or trade for Thomas Plekanec, and all this stuff. So that was, and then when they made Dubas general manager, how long did that last? It lasted a little over a year. And it was like Dubas was Babcock's errand boy. Well, no, he wasn't. He's the general manager, and that's why he got fired. And then he brought in Sheldon Keefe, who he'd worked with for years. Okay. Now, I think it's a different dynamic. I think, obviously, Kyle Dubas has got years on the job. He's got respect around the league. I think he's a good manager. He runs a pretty solid organization that's been much better over the last few years than it was over probably since Pat Quinn. I think that if Quenneville isn't amenable to it, then they go a different direction. But I think that Kyle Dubas can handle or can work with Joel Quenneville. The one thing with Joel Quenneville, I will say, in his years in Chicago, is he is very, let's just say this, quick to the judge of certain players. Like Stan Bowman would bring in Trevor Daley as a free agent or trade for him. And Joel Quenneville, within a couple of weeks, would say, I don't like this guy. And he just stopped playing him. So, that's a coach's prerogative. And that's, he knows what works. He knows what doesn't work. And, he won 3 Stanley Cups, and he was on the way to a President's Trophy when he got let go by the Florida Panthers because of the whole Kyle Beach situation. So I don't know. I don't know if it's for certain. That might be a direction, but I do know what is for certain. If it's Kyle Dubas, if it's another general manager, if it's Sheldon Keefe, or if it's another coach, the core group is not coming back. There's going to be one of them that's gone. And the one thing, I was always of the mind that they would get the most from Nylander because Nylander has a lower salary and scored 40 goals and has had, all the things that we know about Nylander. But the fact is that with Marner with 2 years left, making $11 million is a heavy price, but there are teams out there looking at a 100-point player and looking at how good Marner is and what he brings offensively, defensively, and everything else, that there is a lot of value there. And I don't think that this is a situation where Toronto is going to get taken to the cleaners and only get pennies on the dollar for one of these guys. They're both in their prime. They both can get results. They both can get a return. It's what Kyle Dubas or another general manager get in return. And we have to think about goaltending, and we have to think about a number one defenseman. And we've been talking about a number one defense. And no, this is not an attack on Morgan Rielly, Norm, because Morgan Rielly was arguably the Leafs' best player.
He's never been a number one caliber guy, but number one in Toronto. So he's been misplaced, but he's the only guy who can fill that role.
He's a fantastic number 2. And he's been there's nothing wrong with that. So I'm just saying, if they could conceivably get somebody who is a number one defenseman, and I don't think there's one out in free agency, you would have to trade for it and you have to give up value for it. So if they could get that guy, then trading Nylander and Marner, it wouldn't be the same team. It wouldn't be you're going to get an offensive player for an offensive player. You have to address the areas of need. And that's what they need is defense and goaltending, and then add scoring when you can. And I'll give you one thing, and this is just my guess. If Joel Quenneville was the coach,
right,
begin to start to hear the Patrick Kane rumors. I'm telling you right now.
This my head hurts. There's just so much going on. I am more stressed out because of the last 38 minutes than I was trying to get my kids to get off their devices before we did this show. There's just so much not happening right now, but expected to happen. And the OGs and converts, bless you for your contributions. We are really polarized at this point, and we probably will remain this way for some time to come because of everything that's going to take place. Big trades of guys many of us support. Many of us want out of town, and we're not going to see eye to eye on that. And obviously Joel Quenneville with that whole situation in Chicago, Toronto being kind of a social mecca. Anybody who has any kind of stigma attached to them, you're really going to have to find a way to shelter them from heavy criticism that they either deserve or don't deserve that's outside of hockey. So that's something that has to be taken into consideration if Sheldon Keefe is to be replaced. I've seen Gerard Gallant's name come up, John Tortorella, Gabby. Again, I don't want to bring somebody here just because it's a nice story. It's like, who's coming in to help to elevate this team and push it towards the next level. And the danger here is losing Matthews hurts this team. I mean, sure, it could help, but it would hurt this team. Losing Marner, I know the playoffs or that last series kind of sucked, and everybody's talking about how afraid he is and all that kind of shit, right? And I hear the same thing about Nylander, but losing those guys could hurt this team initially because they're darn good players generally. And when we've got 82 games to play in the regular season before the next playoff round, and we know how the Leafs play in the regular season, pretty damn awesome. So I don't think many of us have the stomach for a 86-point season where they're just barely in contention for a playoff spot. Then again, it might be fun to watch them again, and it may change the way we look at this team, because a little bit more adversity, a little bit more difficulty in trying to obtain these things that we've come to know and just expect to happen is probably what we all need and the organization needs, as it resets towards another plan forward to finally make things happen. Chris Daniels, haven't seen you in a while, my friend. Thanks for your comments in the chat. Mike, we should probably wrap this thing up.
Yeah.
What's the last thing you want to tell us about what's going on at hockeybuzz.com? And that'll do it.
Well, tomorrow I'm going to begin to sort of look at, the possible directions. I mean, tomorrow may be a busy day because if the Leafs haven't announced it yet, but tomorrow might be locker clean out day and the media availabilities. And usually it's Shanahan and Dubas and Keefe. I mean, the thing is with like Shanahan and Dubas, that would be the focus. I mean, unless they're preparing to announce that Kyle Dubas has been extended, which I don't know if they're going to do that. What is he going to say? It's going to be all a review of last season. And, the one thing I can say is I would be dumbfounded if they had this full-throated defense of the core group as they have the last few years. Maybe, no, they won't like rip them to shreds and say they all have to be scattered to the four corners of the universe because that would decrease their value. But there has to be some criticism and there has to be some review of this team. But I don't know what we're going to learn. But if there is locker clean out tomorrow on Hockey Buzz, will be sort of a review of what is said. And I hope that certain players that were brought in, I think everybody would sign up for Luke Schenn being re-signed on a 1 or 2 year deal.
What's it going to cost them?
$1 million. I mean, he's making $800,000 this year. Are you kidding? And if they offered him a 2 year deal at $900,000, I think he'd jump at it. I think he loved playing here again. Noel Acciari, I'd like to bring him back, 1 or 2 year deal, around what he was making with St. Louis. The big one is Ryan O'Reilly. I just have this feeling, again, if Dubas is the general manager, that he would not have traded the assets that he traded for a 20-game rental of Ryan O'Reilly. Ryan O'Reilly is from, Clinton, Ontario.
Do you think Ryan O'Reilly would like to stay if the money's right?
Yes, I do. And I think that would be easier. That would be easier if they trade a Marner or a Nylander to clear salary.
Right.
So we'll see.
Right, and you're keeping a player who does a lot of good stuff in that who can do a lot of good stuff in that third line role. You can elevate him to the second line, even the first line from time to time. But where he's at in his career, he's just pound for pound not as effective a player as a Nylander or a Marner. Man, interesting time. Listen, Mike, interesting times ahead. I'd like to see Ryan O'Reilly re-signed, and you're right. Why would Kyle Dubas expend those assets, Jesus, to just bring in a rental when the conditions appear to be aligned for a re-signing of the guy, and especially with this unfinished business. So yeah, I just like him as a player, and I think he would be a really good support guy, and him being with the team for a longer period of time, and then Luke Schenn too. But there's so much more important stuff that has to
I'll just say this: past behavior is always an indicator of future behavior. And when they traded for Jake Muzzin, he had a year left in his contract, and they extended him. They tried to re-sign Nick Foligno. They offered him a little less than Boston did, and he took the deal with Boston. So when they've traded significant assets for players, they want to keep them because then it's worth more that you traded those valuable players. And so I think that's what they're going to try to do. Now, if he gets offered $5 million a year for 5 years from St. Louis or somebody else like that, then he's gonna be gone. He may have to take a little less, but that's the reality. But maybe they can pay that much if they move other salaries out, and we'll see.
Wreck Bengal, they are perilously close to blowing this thing up. I don't know about blowing it up, Mike. I mean, they may detonate here and there.
I think there'll be an M80 thrown in a room, but they're not going to like TNT the entire house.
No. And we're going to be here for it. So much will happen between now and milestones along the way. And we may have scratched the surface on some of the moves and some of the transactions and things that will occur. And we may be totally surprised. First things first, Mike, though, get the guy at the helm, the guy who's going to orchestrate and oversee all of the changes in place, and give him a vote of confidence and a new mandate to get things done. And then let him go to work, and we'll be witness to all of the work that happens and how this thing is reconstructed for another run at the ultimate success. OG's Converse, thanks so much. This concludes season 5. That's pretty much about it. We'll start picking away at season 6, but the idea was as soon as the Leafs were done, we would shut it down and then we would move on to something else. But we will be back. We're going to do weekly shows. May start next week, may start in a few weeks' time, but we'll just have to see where the news is at. And in the interim, anything big breaks, Mike and I can talk to each other on Facebook Messenger or text, or I'll get the old can out with the string that runs all the way down into Western New York, and we'll figure out how to come together to do another Leafs Convo. OG's Converse, thanks so much for a wonderful season 5. It means so much to us. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be here. So, and it's an absolute pleasure to spend the time with you like we do. And we're looking forward to more. For Mike, I'm Norm. Happy Mother's Day, everyone. Take care.